Hello, 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 and welcome to the Loudcast with me, your host, Kevin McLean. I am still here, still in my flat in Leith, and still bringing you some of the very best of spoken word. And we have a tip-top show for you today. I have a wonderful special guest in the way of Cat Hepburn, and we're going to be talking to her about all the amazing work she does as a poet, a promoter, a producer, a scriptwriter, all of those wonderful things. We'll be talking about Sonnet Youth, which she is one half of. They've been running shows all this kind of lockdown period, and so we'll be diving into that and finding out what Cat's been up to and what she has coming out in the future. So yeah, look out for that. But before we are going to kick things off with some poetry. That is right. We are bringing you 3 poems this week, and we are kicking things off with an absolute belter. He is one of my faves in the scene. I love him dearly, Colin Bramwell, and this is him performing at Loud Poets with Favourite Place You've Ever Been.
I'm still sort of thinking of that question which your man asks, like, what's your favourite place you've ever been? Yourself, sir, second row with the nice shirt there. Where's your favourite place you've ever been? Madrid. Cool, man. Temple of the Bod. So. It's obviously the temple at which I worship. I'll tell you my place I've ever been, man. It's Alton Towers. Yeah, man, it's great. It's a theme park in Derbyshire, if you don't know, and went there in a school trip, and that is a fucker of a journey from the Highlands, let me tell you. Hi. Sorry? Oh, your second choice? Oh, naturally, right? Well, I'll tell you about my trip, man. We left my village at 9 p.m., arrived at the park 8 a.m., back on the bus 6 p.m., arrived back home 5 a.m., and it was fucking crack like. All worth it for me and my best pal Natalie going nuts, sniffing pens on the bus on the way down, KFC for breakfast, and that day we went on all the rides, and I mind one. Oblivion. Anyone been on Oblivion? Yeah. You'll know yourself. Oblivion. You get slowly cranked all the way up to the top, and the whole time you're thinking, fucking shit the bed, this is fucking high up here, like. I can see for miles. And you know the drop's coming for you. And Natalie's beside you. She's gone fucking beige. And you sort of want to laugh, but all you can see is the machine, the tracks, and you're thinking, is this actually safe? Because it's fight, flight, or freeze. And you feel the breeze in your bare arms. Your earwax starts evacuating south. You're not sure if there's coins in your pocket or if your shoes are tied proper, and then the fucker stops. And it's just you alone. Whole front row of the ride goes silent, staring into the abyss. And your heart feels like it wants to escape. To be free as the crows that you saw by the loch, the lake. And you see one. You follow it with your eye and then look round. The endless Midlands. Fields and grounds. Your left shoe slips off your foot, falls down, and you're not angry. Just reminded that life is sometimes worth less than you think. You don't look down that black hole till the mechanism drops you. And you don't mind the drop as much as you mind that green and flat and perfect view. Or Natalie's loud as fuck laughter when the rain comes and you've only got one shoe.
Colin Bramwell there doing his thing. I love Colin so much, and I think it was a kind of good way to kick off because like Cat, he is a theatre maker. He kind of does these character-based, narrative-focused poems, and I just think, yeah, that sort of whimsy and humour and character-based stuff kind of fits the vibe with Cat. It's very nicely. You should go and check out Colin and all of his work. Top dude. But we move on to another couple top dudes, I like to think, me and Perry Jonsson, who you'll all know if you've been a regular viewer of the Loudcast or of what we do here at I Am Loud. We got together and we made a kind of interesting piece off the back of Return to Form. We were looking at forms and we decided to kind of do an ekphrastic piece of poetry where Perry put together footage from a trip he'd taken to Tel Aviv, where he put together some absolutely beautiful 8mm footage, and he gave it to me to write a piece of poetry to. And this is the final product, and it's really, I'm very proud of it. It's something we put a lot of time into, and it got selected for some film festivals and things like that, so it was very exciting, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This is A Moment in Time.
What if we could go back? What if we could snap the laws of the universe in half? No grain of sand ever again falling through your grasp. Could it last? Or can a smile only ever exist in memories past? The sense, sea and skin entwined in the mind until inseparable, frozen, perfect snapshot in time. And I could bend my knees and pray, try to stay in this perfect picture, but no amount of faith can still the waves. And days lived are meant to slip away. Friendships change, lovers stray. And if my prayers go unanswered, if my God has nothing left to say, then I must have faith that forward is the way. I must not drift back, must not let my mind collapse or get pulled into the current of the sand and the hourglass. There is no return to the ocean when you are caught, stranded, trapped, reliving another wave's crest and crash. There is no escape. Your only solace lies in the past, a road to nowhere, an empty land. And yet, that pool is always in sight, a futile desire to push back the tide, to follow in the footsteps of shadows behind, to abandon logic, reason, fear of the divine, to sacrifice all for a moment in time.
And that was me and Perry Jonsson doing our thing. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun to put together. Like I said, it's a piece I'm very proud of, and I hope you enjoyed it. But we are going to be moving right along away from me because I feel weird talking about my own poems. So we're going to dive into someone else's, someone who I love talking about their work because she is a spectacular poet and writer of plays and just a doer of things, the wonderful Hannah Lavery. And we're going to be chatting about this poem with our guest, Cat Hepburn, coming up in a few minutes. So enjoy Rage.
Rage took the steps 2 at a time. We locked her out and she pissed on the front step. Washing it away with Dettol, she kissed the back of my neck. We let her in eventually, let her sleep in the downstairs lockup. She spoke to me there, from amongst the bikes and the tea chest and the stair buckets. I stepped out onto the landing to hear her, to speak back The folk in the stair thought a whisper's a draft, called in the council. We stopped speaking then. I dumped my box of lame My Little Ponies and pushed Rage right back against the wall. She asked if she could play. When we moved to a house with a garden, the movers packed her in two. You see, they didn't know that we meant for Rage to stay. In my new room, we played Connect 4. Saturday telly, hooded in by the fire. I kicked out, she kicked back. We fought until we kissed until we were telt. Took it to the shed, drank my mum's gin.
And that was Hannah Lavery with Rage, a spectacular piece. Hannah is such an excellent performer and writer, and good thing we have another excellent performer and writer here to join us on the Loudcast to chat about that poem and so much more. We're going to be talking about her work as a producer, a promoter, a scriptwriter, a poet, a performer, all of that good stuff. I am so excited to have her on the show. Please welcome Cat Hepburn. How's it going, Cat?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Good. It is so nice to see you. It feels like for absolute ever since I spoke to you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a year since we've done any gigs on stage. So yeah, it's good to connect, albeit on a kind of virtual way. But yeah, it's good to see you.
I just know when things come back to normal, there is going to be the most sloppy open mic ever where all these poets show up and get absolutely trashed and catch up. It's going to be a terrible incident. But I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait.
So what did you think of Hannah Lavery's poem? You know Hannah. Have you met Hannah yet?
Yes,
Yeah,
I've had Hannah on Sonnet Youth loads.
Of course.
And yeah, she's just one of these poets that she just consistently delivers excellence, time after time. And I don't think I'd heard that poem before, Rage. So It was really nice to watch it, and she's just such a good writer and performer. I love her work, and I love how she can say one thing and there's other stuff going on below the surface. It's just exquisite.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with Hannah as well because I think I see a poem like Rage and I go, that sums up Hannah Lavery, right? That's so what I picture when I hear her. But then I know that same show she did with us, she wrote this sort of insane Monty Python poem because it was the title of our show. And it was absolutely hilarious. I think sometimes, and I mean, you'll know this, right? Poets or any sort of writer, people assume they're kind of one thing, but she is so varied in her ability to write. She has a lot of humor in her work as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. She's got so much range, and I think she's just one of the greatest Scottish poets around just now.
Absolutely.
And she's good chat in the green room as well, which is always a plus when you book someone.
yeah. Hannah is always good fun in a green room. But I wanted to specifically use that poem and bring that up because I think there's a lot of similarities between you and Hannah in terms of these are both work for theatre as well. You both write, you're script writers, right? Theatre writers. And I was wondering if you see any sort of parity in the way you approach, the influence theatre has had on you. Do you see any of that in Hannah's work? Is there specific markers that maybe I wouldn't see as much?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think we're all just doing our own thing, and we're running out of fingers to put in all these different pies. It's we're all just trying to hustle and write. And I think sometimes projects end up choosing you rather than you choosing a project. So it's I think that you just kind of, I don't know, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for Hannah, but
Totally.
You just sort of go where the work is and gravitate towards what excites you and what's interesting. And I think Hannah does that in a really bold, exciting way that's so true to kind of her own life experiences as well. So maybe there's similarities there, but I definitely think coming from a theatre background, I guess you just have a bit more awareness of stagecraft, to use a really wanky term. But yeah, I think just we're all coming to writing from a slightly different path, and there's no kind of higher way to get there, you know.
I do think it's something interesting about like spoken word, like performance poetry specifically, that like no one comes really through a performance background. Like when poets ever chat, they have to explain from which direction they stumbled into spoken word poetry. Like, do you think that helps the scene, that sort of diversity of range of background is what keeps, you know, such a wide range of spoken word, you know, from people like sort of like Hannah Lavery or whatever to, you know, like, you know, I'm thinking of folk like Angie Strachan, who are this, you know, kind of like much more, you know, rooted in sort of like fun Scottish wordplay and stuff like that. Like, you know, there's this huge range of spoken word. Is that because we all come from different tracks?
Yeah, I think so. And like, that's what makes it exciting to be, you know, part of the scene and to be an audience member, to be a promoter. I think that diversity is the thing that keeps it alive, and the sort of regeneration that happens when the young poets come up, and we're all kind of in it together as well. But yeah, I think, you know, people coming from all these different backgrounds, like I think the first time I saw you perform, you were in like, were you wearing wrestling gear? But you came from a wrestling background, and it's like, some people come from a wrestling background, some people study at the RCS, and we're all just in it together.
That's so funny. I remember that gig vividly. It was because obviously we're going to chat loads about Sonnet Youth, but Cat is one half of Sonnet Youth along with another amazing poet and performer, Kevin Gilday, and he ran like a slam every year, and he would always theme it. And one year he did a wrestling slam, and I, because I'm a huge wrestling fan and did wrestle for a little while, maybe took it a bit far. I got quite excited and did the second round in my old singlet. It was Jim Monaghan's never forgiven me. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I think that night is seared into my brain because it was my very first performance as well, and I was like, yeah, that was the very first time I'd shared a poem on stage. And then the second time I shared a poem on stage was at the Independence rally in front of like 5,000 people in George Square. So I went from that to that. But I remember that night really well, because I remember just thinking, oh my God, what is going on? Like, I didn't really know much about spoken word, and I just written this little poem about Tinder, and then you came like bowling in, like, yes, like a wrestler.
You know the worst thing about that? I didn't have any wrestling poems, so I did quite a sentimental love poem, and it just did not fit the vibe at all. Absolute brutal. Brilliant. So when you first started, obviously you were like writing for, you know, poetry before you kind of performed it. Were you writing theatre stuff before that? Like, how did you know, what were you up to before you kind of landed in the spoken word scene?
Yeah, so before spoken word, I'd done a degree in theatre and Slavonic studies, which is like Eastern European literature and cinema. And then I also worked at the Arches in the box office. So I was going to a lot of kind of sort of groundbreaking theatre shows at the Arches. And then I did a postgrad in scriptwriting. I did an MA. So that's kind of where I wanted my career to go. I wanted to be a TV writer, but I'd sort of done bits and bobs in theatre throughout my kind of degree. And then through my MA in TV fiction writing, I met Kev, who is the other half of Sonnet Youth. And he'd been doing poetry for a long time. But I think when people used to ask me this question, I'd be like, oh, I only started writing, you know, when I got my degree. But then you kind of think back and you go, actually, I've been writing stories and poems and scripts like since I can remember. Like, my dad taught me how to write a script when I was like 7 or something. So, and our house was full of like old scripts. He's a script writer. So yeah, I think like I came to spoken word at that stage in my life, but I'd been writing stories and all sorts of things before that.
Because I find it so interesting, because you do see that in your work. Like, you know, I gravitate towards poets. I really enjoy poets that, you know, kind of tell stories rather than, you know, kind of like looser imagery based poetry. So I've always been like a huge fan of your work, because it always feels like it's a very, you know, there's a tight narrative within your poems that tells a specific story. There's usually like a character like that isn't necessarily always you, which is you know, something that kind of bucks a lot of trends as well. And then when you see, you know, your book Girlhood, you're the sort of the one you released through Spec Books, like there's scripts in there, right? There's like actual script work, which is such a rare thing to see in a poetry book. Like, is that, you know, is that a sort of accidental influence, do you think, or is that something you know, kind of specifically aim to do in your writing, like tell those kind of stories rather than something more abstract?
Yeah, I think I'm more. It's deliberate. I'm all about stories. I'm all about a beginning, a middle, and end, and structure, and narrative. It's been kind of drilled into me. It's okay to kind of veer away from that sometimes, but yeah, I'm all about just telling stories and telling them in a variety of different ways. I forgot I'd snuck a script into girlhood. And it's funny because then the book turned into a full script because I turned it into a show, which wasn't, I can't remember if I was planning on doing that or not. It's a while ago now, but yeah, I think the two things, they don't exist by themselves. They are completely interlinked. The poetry impacts the script writing, and the script writing informs the poetry. I actually had some really good advice from Hannah Lavery recently when I was going to write short stories for my most recent book. I was like, I know I've always written short stories, but like, is there like a way to do it that, you know, I haven't been told? Like, how do you do it? How do you approach it? And Hannah said, just lean into your poetic voice as you're telling the story, and I think that freed me up a little bit to be like, oh, I can pick ways to construct a sentence that wouldn't be out of place in a piece of spoken word, but this time it's in a story, and people would enjoy it either way, you know.
Totally. I mean, like, I think that's so interesting, and I think because I talk about it a lot on this show, right, and it kind of is a conversation that isn't as important now, right? Like the old page stage debate that was, I don't know, kind of more intense when we were kind of new in the scene, but is, you know, less intense now. But like, I think there is always a conversation around definition, and people want to like specify what is a thing and what isn't a thing. And like, I've never really still found like a perfect definition of poetry, never mind, you know, spoken word or performance poetry or whatever. And I think it's interesting when, you know, speaking to someone like yourself who's a scriptwriter, and you go, so much of your poetry replicates like, you know, narrative and story and character. So like, where is the line between you writing a monologue and you writing a poem? Is it in, you know, is it in the mechanics of the thing, or is it just in the audience you're aiming at? Like, yeah, I don't know if that's I'm so obsessed with this idea of definition, but yeah, is there a clear dividing line for you between things that are like, that's a poem, that's a piece of theatre, or are you ever like, actually I could blur this a bit more?
You're probably looking for a deep answer here, but I'm not going to give you one. I think it's like, what is it for? Is it for a spoken word night? Is it for a show at the Fringe? And then once you know what the end goal for the piece is, that's when you kind of tailor it, or you sculpt it into what it has to be. I think just like, I know this is so basic, but the difference between like a monologue and a spoken word piece is just like, it rhymes. It has that internal rhythm. The kind of beating heart of poetry or spoken word for me is that internal rhythm, and you don't necessarily get that so much with a monologue. But yeah, the word monologue strikes fear into my heart because I fucking hate learning stuff off by heart. I hate it.
Really?
Yeah, so it's much easier for me psychologically to approach everything as a poem, even when it's not.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I will just say, you're saying that's not a deep answer, but you did use the word sculpt, so you know you're getting there. You're getting there. But no, I think like that's interesting about, you know, the learning of it and stuff, and obviously, because it was interesting, I was basically Rab Florence is the guest on the last Loudcast, and I know you guys had him on at Sonnet Youth, and like he had published you know, through Spec Books and stuff, and he was saying like he made a deliberate choice to read when he did gigs rather than learn it, because he wanted to, like, you know, kind of code for the audience that he was being a real poet. Like, do you think that is? Because we used to be quite firm in Loud Poets about like no reading, but that was less about because we didn't like people reading, and it was more about trying to encourage people to like think about performance. We like softened that as time went on, and people were, you know, better at doing that. Like someone like yourself reads really well from a book. Like, do you think that like that works better when poets are kind of reading from a text.
Yeah, I think Rab made a very clever, right decision by doing that, because he's that guy off the telly, he's in Burniston and his face is known for that kind of thing. So I think if he's to step, in front of an audience and, as you say, he's learned everything off by heart, that signifies something that he doesn't want to signify. So I totally agree with his choice of doing that. Yeah. And I think there's a difference between reading from using your book as a prop or reading from the page as you perform, and not having learnt something to the point that you're reading every single word. And what Rab did, because I saw him perform from his book a couple of times, we actually shared a book launch at Waterstones, because Girlhood came out like the month before or the month after his book, and he's just a very skilled actor. So he'd learned those words, he'd learnt them. He'd swallowed them and knew when they were going to come out his mouth, that was a really weird metaphor, but so there's a difference between that and like just not being ready yet, which is fine. I think sometimes you just have to like perform stuff even when it's not ready, because how else is it going to get ready? But yeah, I'm just crap at learning stuff off by heart. I think the only time I would ever do it is if I was performing at Loud Poets, because it was in the rules. Other than that, I'm off the book, because I struggle to learn stuff off by heart, and I don't need that extra stress.
Our rule about it was never aimed at like sort of folk like you, right? Because we recently posted that video of you at Loud Poets, and it was like you've got your book, I think, on stage, but like you're not reading it, the poem, and it was like it's there as a reference tool for you and stuff. It's there so you don't have to learn a full book of poems, and you can flip between what you want to do, which was like that's what you're hoping everyone can do. Like we always described it as that there's the difference between people who can read their poems well and people who read them like it's the first time they've ever picked it up. But I think it is interesting that like, I just found it very interesting when he brought it up, the idea of, because he was so considered performative and like a comedian, to like scale that back and be like, no, I'm reading from a poetry book like a poet, whereas there's often the idea of like being more polished by learning all your poems, right? Like Robin Cairns practices his full repertoire every Sunday or whatever, like to be able to perform like that. It's just an interesting thought in my back of my head. But like I was saying, you had Rab on at Sonnet Youth, and I wanted to talk about Sonnet Youth because you guys have been running it's over 3 years now, right?
We're on season 4.
Season 4,
we do
right?
a season a year, so it must be 4.5 years now. Wow. I think. A long time.
My brain. But like Sonnet Youth is obviously a literary rave, a spoken word house party. It is produced, hosted by Cat and Kev. So like, how did Sonnet Youth get started, and what was the kind of aims behind setting it up?
So I mentioned how I worked at the Arches for 4 years. So the events manager at the Arches moved to Drygate, which is a brewery in the East End of Glasgow, and they were looking to put on a Burns night, and the events manager recommended that they get in touch with me because she remembered that I was getting involved in spoken word. I shat it and refused to host, so I got my friend Kev Gilday to host it. I curated it, and then the night was like such a roaring success. I think we either had like Loki or Alan Bissett. Like, we just sort of pulled in all these favours from like friends, but at the time it's like you look back and you're like, that's a really sick lineup. I can't remember who else was there, but so we just pulled in all these favours. We didn't have like any money to pay anyone. I think we charged like £2 on the door or something, and the night was such a success that the Drygate were like, would you be up for doing a monthly thing? And I remember sitting in Drygate, like drinking like a pale ale with Kev and being like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I would be a very good host. Like, I just don't know if I want to commit to this monthly thing. And he was just like, why don't we try it? And then if you don't like it, we don't have to continue doing it. And boom, 4.5 years later, we're still in a partnership, which has been like the longest kind of working relationship I've ever had, and it's sort of metamorphosized just like moved into all these different versions of itself as it's been going along. So that's how it started.
I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to bring up with you, because like it's fascinating to see the evolutions of nights and stuff. Like, you know, like Loud Poets is unrecognizable to what it was in its first nights, and like so is Sonnet Youth in a way. Like I remember I did maybe the second or third like Sonnet Youth in the Drygate, and like it was, you know, much more reminiscent of like a kind of polished version of what, you know, the sort of open mic was, you know, like a more curated kind of thoughtful, you know, kind of version of that with a bit of music and a bit of kind of comedy thrown in. Whereas like when you look at what you guys are doing now, and you're, you know, it's like this kind of really diverse kind of vibrant cabaret night with like that focuses on spoken word, but in terms of also including, you know, scriptwriters and comedians and MCs and drag acts and things like that. Like, so what was the idea behind making it a kind of more you know, sort of curated experience rather than focusing in on poetry?
I think like for like, we love poetry, but we don't love it that much. Like,
I mean, Kev has fallen out of love with poetry, right? He means it. He means it.
We were just like, do people really want to sit through like, you know, 3.5 hours of poetry, or however long it was? How can we jazz it up, and how can we differentiate ourselves from the other poetry nights? Because you'll know yourself, you don't want to step on any toes, and you don't want to clash on the same night, all that stuff. So we were like, how can we make this different? And I had been obviously working as a writer, and I came from like the theatre sort of background, and you know, during the time that Sonnet Youth has kind of been evolving, Kev's got into doing comedy. So we're able to sort of reach into these different pools of people that we've met along the way, and just showcase different work. So we wanted an element of you might not like every single act that we book, but you'll definitely go away being like, oof, that was some lineup. So that's just what we've tried to have at the core of every single show, and that's translated across to our online shows as well. We have 4 guests instead of 6 now. And obviously we're limited to this like rectangle digital screen that we're all living in now and performing in. But we still have that as our ethos, and just trying to focus more on like diversity, and not for like diversity's sake, but really just like trying to open up to different art forms, different people from different cultures. So I think stuff does just like evolve, as you say, but hopefully we've still kind of kept the little kernel of what we're all about there too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so important, and like I totally agree with what you're saying. There's an element of like, and it can sound bad, right? Like, oh, you don't want to step anyone's toes. It makes it sound like everyone's walking on eggshells. I don't necessarily think it's that. I think, you know, like when you look at, you know, there's a sort of group of poets that came into the scene in not like hugely dissimilar times, who are now like promoting, you know, nights and stuff like that. And I think there's been a kind of general consensus between us that there needs to be a more established scene, right? And like you need to do that in loads of ways. And like an absolutely key way that Sonnet Youth does so well is by exposing other scenes to spoken word. You know what I mean? Like it is good when comics go away, and you know, you've had some really amazing comics that are, you know, tearing up the Scottish scene, and there's a reason that then you're continuing to get them. It's because they're having a good time doing the show, you know what I mean? And so like that exposes them positively to spoken word. Like Rab Florence is a good example. He couldn't have said better things about his experience of the spoken word scene. He even said like it's like a nicer scene. People are nicer to each other. They're like supportive. The nights even feel that way. Like, you know what I mean? Do you think that's important to like make sure that the bases are covered?
Yeah, there's like nothing, there's not a better feeling than seeing the look of relief on a comedian's face when he realises that everyone's nice at a gig, that people want them to succeed, and they're going to be like looking at them with like a look of, yeah, I'm ready for you to make me laugh, rather than like, right, you're going to make us laugh now, aye? I feel like comedy audiences can be a bit like, right, use it then, whereas poetry audiences are just like, I'm here for you to share the inner workings of your mind. So yeah, I love booking comedians, and I just love comedy as well. But the Scottish scene is so vibrant, and I think you're totally right. It's that cross-pollination of the different scenes that will help both scenes kind of flourish. It's like, yeah, and we've got to the point that comedians like know what they're getting because they all talk. They know, they know we're good for the money, that we pay people on time, that it's quite an easy, fun gig. So yeah, I think we've got a good reputation, certainly amongst Scottish comics.
Good. I mean, like it's that thing. I think it does take, a lot to build the scene. Like the sort of, cabaret element. You need the grassroots open mic element. You need, like I would say things like what we do, which is, sort of that performance poetry focus, presentation. Like you need Nori Riki who do, like so much sort of strange and diverse things with video work and things like that. You're like, you need that vibrancy of the scene so that people have the outlet to go and do their specific thing. So it's really cool. Like I as well, I think like Sonnet Youth are so good at being scene builders, like plugging back into the spoken word scene. And like you're saying, right, that sort of cross-pollination, and you do a lot of work with the Scottish Youth Slam, right? Like, and as an educator, like workshop facilitator, and I know Kev does too with like Scribblers Union and stuff like that. Is that a kind of key component to Sonnet Youth?
It's weird because it's not something that we ever like set out to do, but it has sort of worked out that way, because I've been an educator for like over 10 years now, and I started off being like, a drama assistant, and then I realised I didn't really like drama that much. I'm not a drama kid at heart.
No.
So then I started teaching spoken word, and also like lecturing and script writing and things like that. But yeah, I think that the great thing about what we're doing with the different groups. So, for example, you mentioned the Youth Slam. I was originally the host for that, and then since it got moved online, I came back as a facilitator. And you're just like nurturing young talent. You're like showing them examples of what poetry could be that's different from dead old white guys that they read about at school. And you're just showing them, hopefully, that there's no kind of right or wrong way to do spoken word. It's like it really just comes from that person. Everyone has their own different style, and what I try and kind of drill into participants as well when I'm working with them is like, they are the only ones that have lived their lives, so they should never underestimate the kind of magic of that. And then it's great seeing people like Erin Boyle go from being a young person that we work with Toonspeak Young People's Theatre. I started working with her years ago as a poetry teacher, and then seeing her go on to carve out her own spoken word career, doing voiceover work and big commercial commissions like for ScotRail. So it's brilliant seeing that kind of, because the thing is, we all feel like we're sort of staying the same age, but then young people turn into like young adults, and then you're like, oh, okay, time is passing. So it's good seeing that. Because
I don't know if this is rude to ask, Kat, what age are you?
Yeah, I don't answer that question in public. I'm 30. I'm in my early 30s, 32.
That's what I figured, because I was looking for poets, and this is how like stuck in my mind I was, because we're like not dissimilar ages. I also don't specify, just so you know. So like, I'll
get you to bleep that out.
Yeah,
post,
we'll bleep
okay?
that out. Yeah. Well,
my playing age is 25. Okay.
Yeah, but we're and I was going, looking for actors who were 25, poets who were 25 or younger, and like my list was like you and Layla and like folk like that, and then I was suddenly like, oh no, these people are also aging along with me, this is terrible. And I was like, suddenly like, it was very upsetting to realize you've suddenly like jumped 5 years in your head.
It's funny. It's a weird one. It's like when I did my girlhood show a few years ago, I think we spoke about this actually the night that I came on Loud Poets, because we were talking about age, and I was wearing like a Spice Girls t-shirt, and I had my hair in a kind of like blonde bob, and I was like performing this show all about like girlhood, and just reviewers and like critics and people just like assumed that I was like in my early 20s, and I was like a 31-year-old looking back at girlhood. But I think because my acting was so good enough, just there's a combination of factors that meant people were like, this young wordsmith, this young poet. And I was like, it's so interesting how it's like you're just sort of projecting youth, and it's coming across that you are young, because I guess like to me young's like early 20s, which is a whole 10 years younger than I am, but I still feel like
it's that thing, right? The goalposts shift. Like you're 30 when my dad was 30 is different from now that I'm in my 30, right? It's just like a different world. But I think it's so interesting you bring that up, because I found it fascinating, because like Girlhood, I was blown away by Girlhood. I thought it was so good. Like it was one of my absolute highlights of I think it was the last Fringe that was when you were in Gilded Balloon, and blown away by the show. And I think it's that theatre attention to detail, like the fact that you do really inhabit a character. And I see why that could confuse poetry audiences, because so often poetry is presented as like, this is me and I'm telling you a story that's happening now, right? Whereas like Girlhood is it's about capturing that sort of pocket in time. I also think it's amazing how because there's bits of Girlhood online, you know, on your YouTube channel. We will put up a link in the bubble and stuff so you can go and see for yourself. But the way it's shot to feel like it's, you know, like a Facebook conversation or whatever, that sort of like that image of you kind of like talking into the screen, you know, on your elbows on your bed, like is such it feels like a conversation that, you know, you've dropped into between two young girls over like Facebook or whatever. It's such a well-rounded presentation, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted it to be like almost like a girl sharing like her diary with her friend, or finding a diary. I mean, one version of it, because it went through a lot of different versions before the final thing. One version was like she finds her teenage diary, and it's like she opens it up, and then that's how we're sort of taken through. But yeah, I wanted it to be like that. And it's not even like, oh, I made this like big, theatrical decision. It's just that's the way it was. Like, you'll know yourself, like if you're creating a piece, you just know instinctively what feels right for that piece. And it was very much like, intimate. As you say, like you're overhearing a conversation. And it just felt like that was the right way to do it all. But all those videos you're talking about, they're on my YouTube. They were to promote my spring 2020 tour, which was a roaring success, as you can imagine.
So, I mean, on that, how have you pivoted? Because obviously, going back to, you know, what we're talking about with Sonnet Youth, like you guys, I think you were in the middle of a season, right? When it struck, you were putting shows, and then had to kind of immediately pivot to online, and then obviously that's evolved over the year into the SY Social Club, which like people should go and check out. It's available on Patreon. They're putting, you know, like Kat was saying, it's a super curated night where you have like 4 amazing guests from different, you know, spoken word backgrounds, whether that's comedy or poetry or, you know, a variance of other things. It's such a good show. Like how did the process of kind of pivoting to lockdown go? Was I can only assume it was a nightmare for you guys in the initial stage.
So this is what I remember. I was on holiday in Vietnam,
then
I got back, and like the day or two after I got back, we went into full lockdown. But we kind of saw it coming because I'd been in Asia. I was able to see what was happening over there. So like everybody was wearing masks. We got our temperature tested everywhere we went. And there's just a sense of like everything's about to change. So we were sort of expecting it. We stopped doing our gigs before the government told us to, because we were just like, we don't want to be. I think like, was it Stereophonics that still went ahead? It's like a massive arena gig. We didn't want to be the Stereophonics of the poetry scene.
no, like good choice, yeah.
So we stopped doing our live shows, and then we just got in touch with, well, I think actually Trev approached us from Blue Star Streaming, that's like the top streaming company in Glasgow. And he was like, why don't we just start putting the shows out on like Facebook? I think we did like Facebook Live. So we just started doing that, and we did one every 2 weeks for the first few months. And then we reduced down into one a month, I think. And then we got funding again via Creative Scotland. So now we're on Patreon. But yeah, we just adapted. I think it's like that way of like, you just adapt. You just quickly go with what you have to do. And I was very, very nearing like what could only be described as like a burnout when lockdown hit the first time round. So I had quite a nice like 6 weeks, spending a lot of alone time, drinking vodka in my bath, watching Sex and the City, and realising that I was not in fact an extrovert. I am an introvert that needs to like recharge my batteries and not speak to anyone. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to a global health crisis to make you realise that about yourself. But yeah, so we just adapted, and all my other work adapted as well. I'm now fully working online, which is good because it means I can connect to different people that are kind of further away. But obviously, you know, I'm not a frontline worker, and I know how awful it's been.
Totally.
But like all the awful stuff aside, I've been kind of one of the lucky ones for sure.
I think there was definitely an element early on in it, you know, before things got real horrible, like of that thing of, oh my God, this is actually some time to do, you know, some house cleaning, you know, get things in order, get yourself, you know, a bit organized. It's like a bit of time where you can't chase your tail, so may as well get ahead, right? And like, obviously, there's difficulties then the longer it goes on, but you know, you find new ways to deal. I've been so impressed by, you know, the art scene in general for how people have pivoted, usually with, you know, not necessarily the funds and resources to do that easily, but to continue to produce stuff. It's been really heartening. And I know you have been working not just on you know, Sonnet Youth projects and stuff, which there will be links to below in the description. Go and check out Sonnet Youth. But like on your own work, I know you've got a upcoming book coming out with Burning Eye Books, which is Dating and Other Hobbies. I'm very excited for it. Can you tell us a bit about the book? Yeah,
so Dating and Other Hobbies is a collection of poetry and short stories. And yeah, it just sort of summarises about 10 years worth of like dating experiences and it's about relationships and sex and just all the kind of beautiful sticky mess that comes with all of that. And it's sort of like a love letter to like your early adulthood. If you look at like Girlhood was about girlhood, this is about the sort of time just after that when you're meant to be an adult. But yeah, it's filthy, it's fun, and I'm really proud of it, and I just can't wait to like set it out into the world. In fact, I think by the time this comes out, it will have already came out. So yeah, I'm just dead excited.
Amazing, which is excellent. That means we can put lots of links and descriptions and you guys can all go and pick up a copy of the book. I know Burning Eye in themselves do some amazing work supporting, you know, spoken word artists and putting out, you know, publishing spoken word stuff. Is there a plan, Kat, to like make that into a show similar to Girlhood? Like, I know you were saying you weren't planning necessarily Girlhood to be a show off the back of the book, but is it maybe something more structured now?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. I think like I'm like at the moment, you know, performing's just not happening, you know. And I'm kind of cool with that. Like I love writing and I like sharing my work, but I'm happy to just start, I think, working on the next writing thing rather than sort of regenerating this into a show. I would say never, but the way that the kind of the world is just now, I'm happy just taking a wee break. It's kind of like a forced break from performing, but at the same time I'm enjoying it. So is that a good answer to your question?
Totally. No, like I think it's that thing of, I mean, it goes back to something you were saying before of, you know, pick your medium, right? Like not every story you want to tell or thing you want to say or, you know, piece of art is immediately translatable into something else. Like not every book has to be a show, right? Like that's the reality of the situation. I think that's, I mean, it's interesting maybe because you wear so many hats and kind of have so many roles and then therefore kind of means to express yourself that you can be more selective about the things you undertake and like, you know, how you want to demonstrate things. So I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. I think it just comes back to like instinct. My instinct is that this isn't a show, it's a book. So But please don't use that as a soundbite if I end up 2024 dating another hobbies, the stage show. But yeah, it feels like a book. I think it's just a book.
It's a good way to go. But where do you stand on? Because again, it's an interesting conversation that kind of runs through the Loudcast, right? And I was speaking to Imogen Sterling, and obviously she's someone that does a lot of spoken word theatre, and like you are someone who does a lot of theatre, and I guess girlhood falls into that like bracket, right? Of spoken word theatre is kind of like a long narrative piece that is littered with poetry, but your poetry also works independent of, like you can read poems from girlhood without doing the full show and they still make sense and there's still context. Do you have a preference to how you like to deliver your stuff? Would you rather do it in like constructed sets or as like a kind of single show?
I suppose like for girlhood, that's like a big undertaking, that's like learning 55 pages of dialogue, monologue. And yeah, I think just for like ease and for getting my work out there, I just prefer to like, if I'm booked for something, just to select one poem and go, right, that's the poem that I'm delivering at that event. There's value in both, but yeah, it's a lot of work, to put yourself through. To get this big giant thing when you could also just do a little taster of it and still get your kind of point across. And that's why I'm still like getting bookings all the time to read from girlhood. I thought like it would just come out and then I would, I did the show and that's that, and then but it's like I'm, on a monthly basis I'm getting asked to do readings of it still because the subject matter resonates with young girls. And, even though, as we said, like, even though I'm getting older, the message... You make it
sound like this wizard, my old age.
No, I just mean, like, even though, like, I'm getting further away from the piece, like, the piece is still going to stay the same age and will still connect with, like, 13-year-old girls. So I'm lucky enough to do those events. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you are like involved with things, like the Scottish Youth Slam and things like that, and work so well with younger poets and stuff. Because like, seeing girlhood, it is such a kind of excellent encapsulation of that kind of vibe, right? Like it is, even as someone who is, was never a small girl, I don't understand, but like you can see it resonate with the audience. Like when I was there, me and Gally, who came to see it, we stood out in the audience as like, sort of two weird dudes who'd stumbled in. But like, I think it's a testament to the strength of your work, that it's, there is a, oh my God, Katie's going to hate me, but there's like a very authentic feel to the stories you tell, right? Like I think poetry, and it's specifically something that's come out of the Glasgow scene. You see it a lot there, like of people who are telling an authentic story to that experience, right? Who aren't leaning into the kind of North American, very trauma based, very like upsetting stuff, but like when you're talking about music festivals and nights out and like Tinder and bad first dates and things like that, there's something really easy to latch onto in that. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that like it really resonates with younger people.
Yeah, well, they say write what you know, so I know a lot about shit Tinder dates.
Oh, what that's painful, Cat. Painful. I thankfully have missed out on Tinder. I'm very pleased, but I could pick your brain all day about poetry and promoting and all of those wonderful things, and people should definitely come and check out the Loudcast Extra, where me and Kat are going to be having a bit of an extended chat, diving into her work and kind of her poetic style a bit more. You can check that out over on the I Am Loud Patreon channel, so go and do that. And obviously, while you're on Patreon, go and check out Sonnet Youth and donate to them, and then you can check out the Sonnet Youth Social Club, which is absolutely well worth a watch. But Kat, before I let you go and before we go and chat Loudcast Extra stuff, would you mind sharing a poem with us?
Yes, I would love to.
Amazing.
Let me just unpick it from my ring light. So yeah, this piece is from the new book, Dating and Other Hobbies.
Excellent.
So yeah, I'll just check it's in the right order. Okay, so it's called What's Your Type? What's your type? CrossFit fanatics with designer dicks, girls with short fringes who are into politics. Bespectacled cardigan-wearing Guardian readers, broad-shouldered rugby buffs who spray in their receders. Pasty eco-warriors who look like they don't wash. Tall, toothy, horsey people who don't like being called posh. Wiry academics who smoke rollies and drink craft beer. Coke-snorting DJs who have problems being sincere. Curvaceous lassies bearing tattooed angel wings. Dominant older women who love to use sex swings. Men with big wallets, shiny heads and shiny shoes. Spice boys who get their teeth whitened and only shop in crews. Guitar-playing beach bums too stoned to call you back. Angular-jawed, handsome megalomaniacs. Steroid-taking fuckboys who only wear North Face. Busty garden fanatics who have expensive taste. Shorter than average, life and souls always telling jokes. Emotionally unavailable artistic commitment phobes. Skater chicks with piercings, tats, fake tan and vans. Gobby daddy's girls who talk loudly with their hands. Overly assertive cat lovers with a penchant for Merlot. Bearded men who drink tequila and practice stick and poke. Extroverted socialists who tweet more than they march. Workies with great chat who look sexy driving cars. Smoothie drinking gym bunnies with peachy bubble bums. Men who look like bikers who still live with their mums. False nail wearing sarcastic single mothers. Kind-hearted introverted wannabe drummers. Shaved-headed punks who bake their own bread. People who the minute you're over will sleep with your best friend. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome, Kat.
Hopefully we can all see ourselves in some of those people, or maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a disturbing, like, oh God, which one of those do I fit best? Oh, that's upsetting. I think it's so nice, though. It's like a real distillation of your ability to sum up, like, character so concisely. Like, I know we've talked a lot about, like, how theatre influences and background and stuff, but, like, that sort of ability to give such a recognizable yet concise description of someone that almost sums them up entirely. That's, yeah, horrific.
Thank you.
Beautifully done. Yeah, guys, if you want to see more amazing writing from Kat, if you want to check out her wonderful words, you can pick up a copy of her book, Dating and Other Hobbies, from Burning Eye Books. There will be a link in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this. Thank you so much for checking it out. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, please rate and review, give us a follow. If you're checking us out on the video version on YouTube, then please hit like and subscribe, all that good stuff. But for now, we are heading off for the Loudcast Extra, and we will see you again next time. Kat, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, we'd appreciate it if you could hit the like button, if you could hit the subscribe button, and make sure to ring that bell icon so you don't miss any updates from us in the future. If you want to go that extra mile and support us a little further, we do have a Patreon channel with loads of exclusive goodies, and you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. We appreciate your help, guys, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.